कि सर पे टोपी है, मत कहो कि सर पे टोपी है, कहो सर पे हमारे ताज है, कहो सर पे हमारे ताज है, ये चमन हमारा अपना है।
Hello, Dr. Sabharwal. This is Harneet here. Hello to everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Sabharwal, for giving us an opportunity. And my hearty do have Robert and Madhuri, and I think they're ready with the presentation now on volunteering. So over to you, Robert.
Seniors. And although you may see in my presentation, I am a senior myself. So I'm not that far away from each one of you. And just, I suppose you could say in some respects, appearances can be deceiving. In any event, I'm going to share the screen now. And we also have the universal chat room for everybody. If you'd like to put in a question or two along in the course of the presentation, please do. We'll pick that up near the end. And without further ado, I'm going to proceed. In any event, as the title, and I will speak slowly, the title says, "You're 55 plus and part of our volunteering world." And that applies very much in the world that and the communities that we live in, and that's Peel Region, which is Brampton, Mississauga, and Caledon. This presentation is by Volunteer NBC, and I identify myself as the consultant referral service. And I'm just going to move to the next slide. And normally I wouldn't necessarily read this, but I'm going to read this today. We are the volunteer center for residents and community service organizations in the communities I just mentioned. Our core service is to serve members of the public who wish to volunteer in these municipalities by giving them volunteering opportunities that are made available by local community service organizations. And those community service organizations can range from a very high profile organization known, for example, the Cancer Society, the Canadian Cancer Society, right through to almost what we call a virtual pop-up, not-for-profit. And the key here is these organizations are for the public good. They are not for profit or non-profit, if you will. And their purposes, their mission and their vision are to serve those principally in need or to help with a community project. And one example of that, of course, is sports associations. And of course, when I look at my audience, I think of cricket, and I have played cricket, at least in high school, oddly enough, here in Canada. And it could be as simple as a cricket association or indeed a soccer association. In any event, what we do is our core service matches members of the public who create what we call volunteer profiles with us using software known as Volunteer Attract, and they match your preferences, your areas of interest to the activities that any particular volunteering role engages in and is sponsored or presented by a community service organization. As for me, I'm just going to skip over me, but suffice to say, I started with Volunteer NBC as a volunteer, and I volunteered for 6 months, and now I am engaged with the referral system, and also I enjoy giving presentations just like this one. And for this presentation, I slipped in that I am 66, and I think I identify with many, many people who are in this audience today. Generally, why do we volunteer? And this is a general list. This is not necessarily specific to the audience, to you, but there are parts of it that are relevant. And just to give you an overview, one of the principal reasons, and particularly the older we get, we want to give back to our community or to pay it forward, otherwise known as perhaps an altruistic reason. And that's obviously a wonderful motive, a wonderful reason to volunteer, to meet new people or network, or if you're an older person, to stay connected. This would not be relevant to us, but it is a very, very common reason, is to develop skills and employability, particularly for newcomers. If they have professional credentials overseas and they want to adapt or have those credentials recognized, one way is to volunteer, and while demonstrating to professional bodies and trades, for example, that they have the capability and they should be accepted. And then that dovetails, as we say, into a work or school-related practical experience. Many of you will probably know that high school students need 40 hours to graduate of community service, as it's called. Because of COVID-19, that requirement, particularly for students in grade 12, has been cut back to 20. And of course, there's law court involvement if you are subject to a criminal charge. And then, as we call it, if it's diverted, you may be asked to demonstrate your good citizenship otherwise by engaging in so many hours of community service. That's not really voluntary, but it is community service. And you ask yourself, why do I've struck out want to volunteer? In our case, why do I need to volunteer? And the 21st century answers about the motivation for volunteering as these relate to you. And some people, again, kindness of their heart, kindness of your heart. Older adults or retirees need to fill spare time and stay connected. And I identify in particular with this, to sustain relevancy and generate and preserve self-purpose. For me, I feel very fortunate because at my age, getting back into some sort of professional calling is a challenge. And there is this expression called ageism. And what that's all about is you don't put your age on a resume, but when you show up for an interview and they look at how old you are, sometimes silently they say, we don't need a senior citizen to do this job. That's, in a nutshell, what ageism is all about, discrimination. They won't tell you, but they'll give you they might give you a reason that has nothing to do with your age. Something like, oh, you're overqualified, or, well, no, we saw another candidate. But ageism in volunteering is much less of a factor. And that's a good thing. So, and again, connecting this to COVID, in 2020 until now, capacity to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, I put a note in there, folding in the first 3 points. Admittedly, for senior citizens, participating in COVID-19 community response has not been easy, principally because there is a health and safety factor here. The virus does not discriminate, but the virus will affect people whose immune systems are vulnerable. And the older you are, obviously, the more likely the chance that your immune system is to some degree compromised. So out of an abundance of caution, community service organizations say, in many cases, if you're 50 or older, particularly if they're even in a contactless delivery, for example, like a Meals on Wheels or something like that, they will resist the suggestion that an older adult be involved. But that doesn't necessarily slam the door on everybody in every case. The other areas too, the other area that's really, that at least resonates with me is the new ways and the channels of communication. And we call that virtual, or in some cases remote. But I'm going to talk more about that in a few minutes. But overall, volunteering, the motivation, living longer and living healthier. And for some of you that may not necessarily sort of say, well, what's he talking about? Well, wait for it. And I'm going to jump right to health and wellness. And again, this presentation is mostly in bullet points for just to provide what I call the kind of summary that I hope gets the message across. What is a top threat to seniors' health? Well, it begins with the letter I, and I think a lot of you already know what I'm talking about. But what it does is cause a fear of, and it puts us at risk of, they begin with the letter L. And what's the sort of opposite? What's the key, at least the studies say, in terms of promoting seniors' health? And that begins with the letter A. And it ideally involves both your mind and your body. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about ways and means. And once again, ways and means originates with you, with me, with support. Question is, who's going to support you in this quest? Who's going to support you in this undertaking? Well, the I is isolation. I don't think there's really a secret here. And the L is loneliness. And I made a distinction here. Isolation is the condition. Sometimes we're isolated beyond our control. And I must say, if each of you has family that cares about you and stays in touch with you and recognizes the hardships, particularly the physical contact and socialization hardships occasioned by COVID-19, then I'm very happy for you, as anybody would be. But not all of us is that fortunate, not all of us. And again, if we are exposed to the kind of isolation that many people are, you don't have to be an older adult to feel isolated or to be isolated. Obviously, coming along with that is the feeling of loneliness, and that's a feeling, and certainly not the right prescription. And again, some of you may be able to help me out here, but a survey of the literature tells me that it does affect your lifespan, and not positively. It increases the risk of helplessness, depression, dementia. It encourages, even passively, physical lethargy, carelessness, and a higher incidence of falls. There have been studies done about that. And then I'll say myself, because I'm, shall we say, unattached. I don't have kids, and I don't like cooking for myself. And that goes to increasingly poor self-nutrition or indeed substance abuse, and a possible onset of irregular, harmful sleeping patterns. Our sleeping patterns over our lifetimes change, but hopefully we keep a core of healthy sleeping patterns. And when they get irregular, when they get fragmented or needlessly interrupted, the cost cumulatively, in other words, over time, can be very, very unsettling and very harmful. And then we all face a possible, well, through isolation and loneliness, an accelerated decline in social skills. Has anybody ever complained, who's listening to me? Young people say, a teenager says, who's listening to me? But what about an older person? A person who has experience, has skills, has a perspective, an enlightened perspective, if you will. And they're sitting in a room, who's listening to me? And it's not being selfish. You just want to be part of it. You want to be part of the scene. Nothing wrong with that. And maybe I'm being a bit personal here, but loneliness is the feeling that most dread. I think I certainly dread it. I dread it. And some of you may know who Greta Garbo is and her famous quotation, "I want to be alone." Well, I don't think I've ever met one person in my life who truly wants or can be alone. So what's the right prescription? Well, I think we already know. It's being active beyond a morning walk, a stretch, or a game of crib, that's short for cribbage in case you don't know, or solitaire, but solitaire isn't very social, is it? Or baking a pie, or a daily call from your daughter or son, and I put in brackets here, if you're lucky. Not everybody hears often, like every day from their children. That's a very personal thing. And that's why I say if you're lucky. But joining with your community as a volunteer is being active. And I start with mentally, because some people physically aren't quite as agile as senior citizens as they are mentally, and it could work the other way, of course. But going down this list, paying it forward, that special feeling of giving. Some people are givers, some people aren't. I'm a giver for what it's worth. I love giving. Maybe I give too much, but I love giving. And if you haven't been in that sort of mindset lately, give it a shot. And some people are natural givers, others not so much. One thing that we at Volunteer NBC do, like I think most enlightened perspectives, we don't judge. Okay. Other aspects about being active mentally. Volunteering is something to look forward to. It's part of your daily routine. Even at our ages, we need routine. In fact, we rely on routine in many respects. Increasing or preserving our cognition, in other words, our brains. And the old saying is, use it or lose it. Don't lose it. Volunteering is a very, very active exercise. And your skills and experience matter. And they don't matter as a matter of nostalgia. I don't like the word nostalgia. I don't know about you, but I don't like the word nostalgia. I live in the present. I live right now, in the moment, right here. And I encourage everybody listening to this presentation to do precisely the same. You are shortchanging yourself if you don't live in the present, in the moment. Because as I say to teenagers, I tutor them too. I say to them, oh, you wasted an hour? Oh, are you going to get that back? No? Well, you better think about that. Okay? Physical limitations. The thing about volunteering, particularly if you have some physical limitations, and we all do. I'm a diabetic. I have certain physical limitations, is that some volunteering roles put those limitations, relatively speaking, into the background. In other words, we don't dwell on them. We don't think about them. They don't preoccupy us. Volunteering, and there's a saying, and I'm including it right here. Volunteering is people helping people connect for your benefit. A lot of people today say, what's in it for me in terms of volunteering? Well, health and wellness for older adults, for sure. When you count for others, you are counted. Those who speak up, those who participate are amongst the counted. Those who are away from it, isn't there a tendency to be overlooked? And I sort of wrap it up by saying everything about volunteering. The training, you can always learn as a senior citizen, the doing, what you're actually doing, and there is a recognition by many community service organizations. And I guess we're all modest about being recognized, are we? I guess we are, but we enjoy it. Volunteering also can be physical. And I talk about modest activity, getting comfortable in a home volunteering setting, use of your eyes, your ears, your hands, and your voice, or helpful exercises, stretching to offset fatigue. And in your community, and I'm just using an example here that we posted recently. Victoria Order of Nurses, I'm sure some of you have heard of that lovely organization. They help older adults who cannot help themselves within their residences, within their homes. And they also help anyone who has limitations, albeit maybe temporary or maybe ongoing. But they actually looked in one of their COVID-19 programs that were delivering food and essentials to persons who could not or were not, it wouldn't be wise for them to be out and about during the pandemic. They looked for volunteers who were over 50 years old. I will admit this is unusual, but it's an illustration of what I call the call is not limited. The call is not limited. And I will point out, as we emerge from COVID-19, and we will, as a positive vaccine mindset develops, community service organizations will come back and they will increase the age range of their potential volunteers. We have no doubt about that. And of course, maybe this is a personal preference, but for me, the ideal is giving to your community via impactful projects. And that includes, for many of us who are older, from home. And one of these projects has been with Volunteer MBC during COVID is what we call the Mask Marvel Project, where we had a wide variety of volunteers actually make masks, sew masks from their homes. And I didn't see Madhuri's screen. Madhuri, are you on?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about this just for a minute or two?
Yes. Thank you, Robert. You able to see me?
I can see, well, we can see the screen, but we can hear you.
Okay. So I would like to speak in Hindi if everybody is okay, to make it more relevant to the audience. मेरा नाम माधुरी है. नमस्कार. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sorry, Madhuri, थोड़ा सा कैमरा नीचे करो आप please.
थोड़ा सा.
Just
okay.
Yeah, it's
Better?
good now. Perfect.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
You can see me now? Okay.
Yep.
So ओवरऑल इस प्रेजेंटेशन के बारे में अगर मैं 2 या 3 लाइन में क्या को इसको डिस्क्राइब करना चाहूँगी तो हम वॉलंटियर MBC एज वॉलंटियर सेंटर हम कम्युनिटी को कनेक्ट करते हैं मिसिसागा, ब्रैम्पटन और कैलेडन में. आप में से बहुत लोगों ने वॉलंटियरिंग की होगी पहले बैक होम में, इंडिया में, जहाँ से भी आप आए हैं. वॉलंटियरिंग, आई होप इट्स नॉट समथिंग इज कोई नई चीज़ नहीं है आपके लिए. सो हम कम्युनिटी को कनेक्ट करते हैं डिफरेंट वॉलंटियरिंग अपॉर्चुनिटीज़. कोविड के कारण बहुत सारी कम्युनिटी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ बहुत कम हो गई इन कम्युनिटी कि हम वॉलंटियर करें, लेकिन ऐसी बात नहीं है. बहुत सारी ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ हैं जहां पर आप अपने कंट्रीब्यूशन दे सकते हैं. तो सबसे अच्छा एग्जांपल मैं आपको इस अभी जो स्क्रीन पे दिख रहा है उस पर आप थोड़ा सा बात करना चाहूँगी कि दिस मास्क मार्वल प्रोजेक्ट एक हमारा मास्क मेकिंग प्रोजेक्ट है जो वॉलंटियर MBC ने 2020 में जब कोविड इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ था तब हमने अपने वॉलंटियर्स को कॉल आउट भेजा था कि हमें मास्क की ज़रूरत है इन कम्युनिटी में. सो ओवरऑल 5000 मास्क कम्युनिटी में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किए गए थे टू डिफरेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, जिसमें फूड बैंक है, जिसमें शेल्टर्स है, और ये सारे मास्क वॉलंटियर्स ने मेक किए हैं. और मेजॉरिटी ऑफ देम आर सीनियर्स जो अपने घर से कंट्रीब्यूट करना चाहते थे, समथिंग टू गिव बैक, कि हम भी इस प्रोजेक्ट में शामिल होना चाहेंगे. और वन ऑफ द मास्क मार्वल, हम उसको मास्क मार्वल कहेंगे, मेरी मम्मी भी हैं उसमें जिन्होंने कंट्रीब्यूट किया था. सो इट्स समथिंग विच कनेक्ट्स टू कम्युनिटी. और ओवरऑल 5000 मास्क इस बहुत बड़ी बात है अपने आप में कि इस प्रोजेक्ट को हमने पहली बार शुरू किया और एक सक्सेसफुल प्रोजेक्ट से। अगर आप में से कोई इंटरेस्टेड है जो अपना थोड़ा सा टाइम और कंट्रीब्यूशन इन मास्क मार्वल प्रोग्राम में करेंगे, तो मैं अपना लिंक हरनीत से शेयर करूंगी, तो आप हमें ईमेल कर सकते हैं। तो जब नेक्स्ट टाइम जब भी अपॉर्चुनिटीज आप अगर इस प्रोजेक्ट में शामिल होना चाहते हैं, तो वी विल बी वेरी हैप्पी टू हैव यू ऑल।
And thank you, Madhuri. If you can also, Madhuri, put your contact information in the chat, and so
Yes.
everybody can, you know, see.
ओके और अगर मेरी हिंदी इतनी क्लियर नहीं है तो सॉरी, बीच बीच में इंग्लिश के वर्ड्स आ रहे हैं, लेकिन मैं कोशिश कर रही हूँ कि मुझे बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है हिंदी में करते हुए। आई फील मोर, बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है बहुत दिनों बाद। तो थैंक यू सो मच। एंड मैं चैट बॉक्स में अपना नंबर और लिंक टू आप अपना प्रोफाइल क्रिएट कर सकते हैं, उसमें मैं डाल रही हूँ। थैंक यू हरनीत।
Okay, thanks, Madhuri. Harneet, yes, and won't be much longer. The links in the chat are important. We also are available with Ramesh in terms of, I guess you could say, linkage after this meeting, because as I say, you can become a client of Volunteer MBC at no cost to you, and it is a portal to volunteering within Mississauga, Brampton, or Caledon. And again, I want to just summarize very quickly some of the contemporary, some of the most recent trends. And I've sort of summarized it here as the importance of connecting remotely or virtually. And it could be as simple as a weekly telephone call to a fellow senior, as simple as that. And some of you may have heard of Indus Community Services, prominent organization within Peel Region. And they have, for years, they've had an ongoing program, a friendly visitor program. It has operated both in person and virtually. That is, you would volunteer, make a scheduled phone call or check-in with a member of the Indus Community Services clientele, or in some respects, depending on the circumstances, you could even go online with them through a laptop or even a smartphone and connect visually with them and engage in a wider range of activities than a simple phone call. And again, I'm sort of, my attempt at humor is, and yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks. And the reason I say that is because many seniors say, I don't know anything about computers. I don't know anything about the internet. I have no intention of even becoming even mildly familiar, and I can't navigate anyway, so that's the end of it. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I learned the internet. I learned all I need to know, not all I need to know, pardon me. I learned how to navigate on my own. I want to just defer for a moment to Harneet about a couple of programs that will be probably more active once COVID resolves. But could you just give a little insight into maybe computer training for awareness for seniors?
Sure, absolutely, Robert. Thank you so much. So, as Robert mentioned, हमारे Brampton East location के through actually पहले हमारे सेंटर में ही एवरी फ्राइडे कंप्यूटर क्लासेस लगती थी, फ्री कंप्यूटर क्लासेस, बट वो प्रोग्राम अभी फिलहाल बंद है कोविड की वजह से भी। और लेकिन हमारे और भी कंप्यूटर क्लासेस दूसरी पार्टनरशिप्स के साथ दूसरे सेंटर से भी चल रहे हैं ब्रैम्पटन ईस्ट लोकेशन से। तो अगर उसके लिए भी आपको कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन चाहिए तो आप प्रियम से या मेरे थ्रू आप उसकी इन्फॉर्मेशन ले सकते हैं कंप्यूटर क्लासेस के लिए, ऑनलाइन कंप्यूटर क्लासेस के लिए। तो प्रियम या मैं या हम आपको मतलब बता सकते हैं कि और कहाँ आप जा सकते हैं, फ्री कंप्यूटर क्लासेस, ऑनलाइन वर्चुअल डिजिटल ट्रेनिंग एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट।
Yeah, and when we were sort of preparing for this session, I'm going to be quite forthright in saying that various levels of government have to recognize that one of the most important things they can do, particularly post COVID-19, is to set aside funding and human resources to increase computer literacy and internet awareness amongst older adults. This is absolutely vital because virtual, it will become, if it isn't already typical of the new normal that we will experience. And again, it may not be popular with many people, particularly older people, but unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your attitude, this is part of the new normal. This is an example of Volunteer NBC's, what a Volunteer NBC's webpage looks like. I'm not going to dwell on this for more than maybe 15, 20 seconds. This is a course known as Orientation to Volunteerism. It is more sophisticated than the presentation today, but for those of you who are interested in pursuing the reasons, the why volunteering is so important in the community, taking this free e-learning, as we call it, this free module online will give you insight as to the relevancy of volunteering, particularly in Peel region and across Canada. It's an excellent module and I highly recommend it. We're not going to get into Volunteer NBC resources given the time, but the links are in the chat, presumably at this point. And Ramesh, if you could actively make those available to your members as they request them on an ongoing basis, certainly we would really appreciate that. In terms of that, you have to take the initiative. And I'm talking about everybody who's listening. In terms of volunteering, you take the initiative, you create the profile, you become involved. And we do not really come to you. We can't make you volunteer, we can only invite you. And hopefully today we showed you some genuine advantages and positives about volunteering. I want to thank you on behalf of Madhuri and personally, and Volunteer NBC. We're a small team of 6, I think, at this point. We have engaged in enormous COVID-19 community response, and I can't believe it's been almost a year. And we still have, Madhuri, how many in-house volunteers did we have this year?
This year, over 162. Past year, 2020.
That's just in-house. That's
yes,
just in-house.
That's it. Yes.
Just remember, when you volunteer, there's always a ripple effect in so many ways. And it does not go without saying that we're grateful for our ongoing partnership with Archev. They've been instrumental in so many ages, in so many ways, in terms of awareness and volunteering, and again, helping people, particularly newcomers, participate in the Canadian experience as, shall we say, as quickly and as effectively as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. We are open to question and answers. If anybody has any question, they can just type it in the chat box and we can take it from there. कुछ भी questions हैं, कुछ भी पूछना चाहते हैं तो माधुरी आपकी सारे questions के answer दे सकती हैं, Robert भी.
Definitely, Harneet. It's so now it is open to the members. Any one of you who wants to raise any question or query, or in case some clarification on any point. So माधुरी और रॉबर्ट दोनों ने बहुत अच्छे तरीके से हमें वॉलंटियरिज्म के बारे में बताया कि देखिए सीनियर्स के लिए ये बहुत ज़रूरी है कि मेंटली एक्टिव रहने के लिए, एंगेज रहने के लिए, आइसोलेशन से बचने के लिए, और ये बहुत ही ज़रूरी है. तो हमें एक्टिव रहने के लिए हमें वॉलंटियरिज्म करना चाहिए। अब आप में से जो कोई क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहते हैं, प्लीज मोस्ट वेलकम। अनम्यूट करिएगा और क्वेश्चन पूछिएगा।
Yeah, I see a question here already. And hello, and it says, is there any conflict with the family members who don't need any help to their senior member who definitely need your help? I'm not sure I quite understand exactly what that's all about, but let me be clear on one thing. At least we do not necessarily provide volunteers to help senior citizens. We rely on our community service organizations such as the VON to do that. What we do with, for example, the Victoria Order of Nurses is at their request, we post their volunteer roles, which almost inevitably are for assisting seniors. And we, in effect, broadcast or circulate that role within the volunteering community and the public at large through our website. And people can apply for that role directly through our software to the Victorian Order of Nurses and get connected so that they can help a senior. Does that help, Ram, with that?
Yes, that is okay. That is fine. Again, Roberts, we were trained to help the mentally ill people. A lot of sessions we gone through, and we are not qualified to help the mentally ill people. Similarly, if we are volunteer to help the senior people and they don't entertain us, they don't listen to us, and they don't need any assistance, then we have to come back.
Oh, okay. Now I think I know where you're coming from. Yes, that's a difficult situation. And if you ask, for example, a social worker who's employed by the Region of Peel, they will reply probably, well, it's difficult if a person refuses your assistance and they are still capable, mentally capable. They can take care, they know, I mean, they're with it to a degree. There's not much that even the region or professional social worker can do. And again, it's very frustrating. And in many respects, even the professionals, they use all their training in an effort to get that individual to buy into the kind of assistance that may be offered. I mean, I'll tell you from my own personal experience. My mother was believed almost to the end that I don't need any help. I'm an independent, woman, whatever else. But that's, again, we're talking about scenarios or situations where a person may have the onset and with varying sort of speed of dementia, and they don't even realize that that what they're saying just doesn't make any sense. But the problem here is and again, this is slightly off topic, but the problem here is, quite frankly, the law is very cautious in dealing with that. It's very cautious. We want to do the right thing, but there's a big gray area that the law cannot compensate for, unfortunately, and it can really hurt a family. It really can. So.
Okay, Robert. Yeah. And the question remains that if you want to be a volunteer, you have to go through any training.
Yes. Can I add to it,
Sure.
Ramji? Can I just add? So some of the training for for example, District Center of Peel, they are specially organized and trained in this particular kind of role where you have to have kind of mentorship and training kind of role. So there is for that particular opportunity organization, the training itself for 3 months. So they train their volunteers well enough to handle any situations. So training will be given
Okay.
prior to that. So how to overcome some situations, because it's every person is different and you don't know how exactly they're going to react on that particular moment. So training will be provided.
Okay. Actually, Madhuri, in this situation of COVID-19
happens,
we had to
Sorry?
go on virtual system. We
Yes.
cannot go personally.
No. All these opportunities, जो भी opportunities सब online or via phone.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Secondly, in your records, how many percentage of people below 65 are the volunteers, and how many people above 65 are the volunteers?
So it depends upon the program. Some of the programs, they will only take somebody who is 50 and above.
Okay.
They will only entertain, for a simple example was a food bank related. So the cause for that is to engage more seniors. So for them, they had just specifically listed 50 and above.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Madhuri, my
Ji.
question is, if accidentally any mistake happens from the volunteer,
Yes.
is his that thing covered, you know?
So is it like via on phone, or like if it's a
No,
driving?
anything while doing the volunteer work, if
Yes.
commits any mistake, you know?
Yes. So a simple example I will give for volunteer drivers.
Okay.
Who are delivering meals.
Yes.
Right. They are on the road. So each organization has the volunteers are covered under their insurance.
Okay.
As long as they have their valid paperwork done. So before even they engage, all these protocols are being made.
Very right. So this is.
Can I just add to that?
Do some volunteer work.
Yeah, can I just add to that? And every community service organization that's, shall we say, legitimate, has third-party liability insurance. And that relates to not just, I guess you could say, driving, but it also relates to things like garden, like it's not popular to talk about, but things like, say, a volunteer assaults a client of the community service organization, or there's an element of dishonesty of some sort. These third-party liability insurance policies are well known, and in order to, I guess you could say, minimize the risk, Volunteer MBC participates and leads, I think, the sector in what we call due diligence training, and that goes to screening a volunteer, and it's so important that a volunteer. And again, this goes to the training question. It's so important, particularly in what we call relationship volunteering, a lengthy relationship, shall we say, with an organization and with a possibly a particular client of that organization. It's very important that sufficient training be given in order to minimize the possibility of a mistake or the possibility of something that's, shall we say, worse than a mistake. For example, in even the distress center of Greater Toronto, they have, and other organizations in terms of distress lines, they have a minimum of like 20 hours or even 40 hours of active, these days, virtual training. Plus, when you are accepted provisionally, or they will have experienced staff persons or volunteer leads shadow you initially in your role to make sure that, for lack of a better term, you're doing it right. So all this is a way of giving you an assurance that both training, screening, due diligence, they are watchwords within the volunteering sector.
Yes. Anyone? Any other question?
Anji, Sabharwal sir, can I ask a question?
Yes. It is DK Ghera, please. Yes.
My question to Robert and Madhuri. I want to know, that what is the maximum age to become a volunteer? Is it there are chances for 85 plus? Number one. Number two, if it is eligible, then what type of volunteer work they can be offered or they can do? Number three, of course, nowadays because of COVID, we are not moving. But when we have to move out, then such person has got only trans help, no his personal transport. So how one can be accommodated?
Well, okay, Madhuri, go ahead. Go ahead.
So simple example, I would say one of our most senior, volunteer was 96.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Yes. So she when she came to us looking for opportunity, there were not many organizations were looking to take in terms of her capability. When you say 96 is like, okay, what this person could do, but she was able to volunteer over 2 years at the food bank. She was making soup, cutting vegetables, soup things, and then serving food to the in the kitchen. So there's no limit as long as you have the willingness to help. There's no like set example that you have to be certain age. There is minimum age, what the minimum age for one opportunity is, but in terms of maximum age, unless it's stated, okay, you have to be, unless it's a youth opportunity, you have to be between 13 to 30 years. That's different, but opportunities is regardless of the age.
Thank you very much. Then what type of volunteer work one can have?
There must be a will.
What type of work?
So the simple example I would say, especially for the COVID related, you can use your language skill, anything, the opportunities for having, if you know Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu, there are opportunities that you can help those clients, like a telephone reassurance or a check-in calls, how they're doing, and all these. There are so many virtual roles that one can do without even going outside from the comfort of their home, and still try to contribute towards the society using their language skills, which is like not, which is a talent, I would say. It's a skill, I would say, because not everybody have those language skills. And specifically for our community, we do need people who have those language skills, and there are a couple of opportunities even available on our website, which they need Punjabi or Urdu speaking and writing. This was like more very challengeful for some of the young generation who could speak, but writing was a little hard for them to write in Urdu or Punjabi or Hindi.
I just want to add that the stated policy of Volunteer MBC is diversity and inclusiveness. And every once in a while, I get a community service organization that says, well, we want a specific age group, or we're looking at a specific community. And of course, when they bring up things like gender, that's for lack of a better term, a hot topic. So we are more inclined to try to draw in a maximum range of volunteering rather than be restrictive. I guess, I mean, there's that old saying, you're only as old as you feel. That's a nice way of putting it. But I would only add that after COVID resolves, some of the positions that were in our system will undoubtedly return. And those are physical, those involve physical presence by seniors for seniors. And I mean, quite frankly, there's really no substitute for in-person volunteering, people helping people directly. But as long as the pandemic is, shall we say, ruling the days, then as Madhuri has pointed out, all this stuff is virtual, and we either get with the program or we sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, Robert, to follow up to Madhuri's sort of a variation of the languages, Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu, all these languages, one part of skills in a person. But still, if you're helping a person, he knows solitaire, he knows card games, and I do not know any card game. And there are areas where you have to be multitasking person. Multi-language is one part. Then talking about the interest of the recipients whom is going to provide volunteer services, you should know his interest or her interest, what she is really up, and how you train those things, how you do that.
Screening. And also, we have in the past had in a lot of at least in a number of long-term care settings, we've had what we call recreational volunteers. And the actual position description that would be on the website to attract a volunteer would be very specific in terms of the type of activities that we would expect the volunteer to be knowledgeable about and be able to participate in. The easiest example I can give is an Italian long-term care facility. They play certain types of card games that are culturally tied to Italy. They play, I guess, bocce ball, for example, which is, again, sourced in Italy. And a member of the public looking at a particular volunteer position for that long-term care that's recreational,
Okay.
ideally would be totally informed going in as to what is expected. So there are no surprises. The other aspect of this is that as part of the screening process, particularly when it's a relationship style volunteering, not just, for example, an event that happens on a weekend and so forth, many, if not most organizations will hold an interview of the candidate to satisfy themselves and ask for a resume as well, to satisfy themselves that what volunteer is saying or what the volunteer is interested in is actually a fact, and also that they have the capability and in some cases the experience to carry out the role and be effective. I mean, it's almost like getting a job, but not quite.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's much more explicit.
Cannot get any job. The only
Yes.
thing is just to remain active. One must volunteer, and that is very important.
Yes.
So-
Thank you, Ramesh ji. And
मुलाकात हुई उनसे भी और माधुरी आज आपसे भी मुलाकात हुई और रॉबर्ट से भी मुलाकात हुई, बहुत अच्छा लगा. So we'll remain connected, you know.
yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Sabharwal. Really appreciate your time and your words.
Harneet,
All right, then. Thank you, Robert and
Thank
Madhuri.
you. Thank you.
thank you very much. So nice of you.
Before everybody closes, I want to make a comment.
Yes, Dr. Patodia ji, he would like to make a comment. Yes, Patodia ji.
We have talked about volunteerism, and you have really provided the venues which one can take to volunteer themselves for whatever interest they have in and whatever way they want to volunteer. But let me tell you that all of the senior citizens or all of the club members who are in our club and in other clubs, they have been volunteering, but sometimes they are so humble, they don't want to recognize themselves, and sometimes they don't even know that they are volunteering.
Yes.
So everybody in this club has been volunteering throughout their life. Now you have opened up because of the COVID-19. We are shut in our homes. So you have opened up another venue as to being at home. You still can volunteer in so many ways and be helpful. And that volunteerism is very welcome. Thank you.